Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful day. Great to be here. I think the last couple of conversations, it's been really lovely to think about this theme of transformation. And I think even with this topic around creativity and specifically around social, I think, with you guys, it's really about a transformation that happened rather quickly. And it was really a lovely story, so I can't wait for you guys to hear this. But first, and again, I'm Valerie Vespa. I work at OUTFRONT Media, just my plug for my company. If you're interested in out-of-home, oh, that's so kind. That's so kind of you, yeah. If you're interested in out-of-home, come and chat with me. I'm always willing and able, or just anything in general. Okay, so anyway, I think let's just start off with an intro of, your names, who you are, your roles at Wayfair, and how long you've been there. Kyle?
Oh, you get to
Oh, yeah, I can start. Hey, guys, I'm Kyle Wright. I have been at Wayfair for a little over 10 years in the creative department, wearing a lot of different hats, although none as cute as Alex's. And my team works on all of our various content and editorial channels, everything from online video to partnering with these guys on social to any of the new sort of content franchises that we're starting to roll out and everything. And we also do a lot of work on campaigns. So really fun stuff.
Awesome.
And how long have you been here?
Oh yeah, I've been at Wayfair for, I think I said it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Gosh, I missed it.
a little
I'm
over
sorry.
10 years. I'm the Wayfair dinosaur.
Oh, good.
I'm Chris Kelleher, so I lead social media, focusing a lot on content as well as upper funnel paid across Meta. I don't know if anyone else hates to say Meta. I like to say Instagram and Facebook. Pinterest, TikTok.
Today, a hot mess.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So no, yeah, okay. No shade. Just easier for me to say Instagram, Facebook still. TikTok and Twitter, which we can also talk about later if anyone's interested. I've been there just since March, so pretty new to joining. And I also wanted to call out how coordinated we are as a panel. If we can just take a moment.
It's incredible.
But yeah, that's me.
Hey guys, I'm Alex Frias. I've been with Wayfair now a little over a year. So my teams, we lead a couple different things. So one is marketing campaign strategy. So basically, like, how do we go to market? Working with brand and commercial kind of objectives, synthesizing that, putting that into a creative brief that then we can kind of serve up to Kyle and his team, and then working on our marketing channels strategy and basically like that end-to-end process, right? How do we go to market in support of our promo events? So if you think of like Way Day, C5, our categories, and then brand. Then we have content and commerce, which is a combination of media partnerships, affiliate marketing, and influencer, which obviously feeds in nicely into what Chris's world and what Chris's team is doing. Then we have brand partnerships. So the ultimate influencer, Kelly Clarkson, right? So how do we do that, and how do we continue to leverage that? How do we do much more than just Kelly if we're thinking about brand partnerships and collaborations and kind of corporate alliances? And then lastly, kind of something really exciting is physical retail marketing. So as you kind of, some of you hopefully have known and kind of hopefully have gone to some of the retail stores here in the Boston area, Wayfair, we're launching into physical retail. And my team, we lead that charge in terms of like, how do we go to market and how do we inject those needs into kind of the marketing channels? So, and then kind of the last piece is a content marketing, and like, how do we like, we have all this great content that we're starting to generate, like, how do we leverage all that, right? So, so yeah, so basically I just clean bathrooms. So.
I was going to say, just a small job. Before we get into sort of, the obvious explanation of what Wayfair is, because I think it's just important to kind of share the ethos that you guys are, generally have. But I just wanted you to finish this statement just to get a little bit more of an understanding about who you are. You would know me better if, and Kyle, I feel like you seemed most interested in sharing this.
Get me on Instagram, slide into my DMs.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Anything else?
No, I mean, I think
Hard question.
we're talking about social. Like, yeah, if you want to get to know me better, grab me after this. I'd love to chat and meet you guys. But also, yeah, I think everyone's social media account is a real embodiment of who they are and what they think. So, yeah.
Even if it's fake.
Well, yes.
Yes. You would know me better if you followed me on social. If you knew I was a Swiftie, right? Very excited about the upcoming tickets. It's me. Hi. Sit down, Alex. What else? You would know me better if, so I actually started in PR, so knowing that I have like more of a PR background, PR to social. Journalism was actually my first major in college before I changed that up.
Me too.
Really?
Same here.
This is why we're amazing.
This is why I
together.
love this question.
Yes,
You literally didn't even know
no,
that.
actually, I did not know that. Yeah, I have a lot of journalism influence in my family, and that's what I thought it would be. And actually, I changed majors because I got nervous that I wouldn't know how to like find news. I'm not even kidding. It was a different time. Yeah, and here I am today. So you know me better than anyone now. Go ahead, Alex.
Oh, wow, that's so. I guess yeah. So I wanted to be a journalist when I was growing up too. I had a video game magazine when I was like 12, and then I covered hockey for AOL when I was in high school. I'm a New Yorker, so I covered the Rangers, and since I look like a hockey fan, so in high school that went over well in press boxes. I think that was going to be my original answer. I was going to say is I make shoe contact before eye contact. So if you want to get to know me, let's talk about shoes.
He's not kidding.
You can tell a lot about somebody by like their shoes,
So
right?
self-conscious
Man or
now.
woman.
Gosh.
It's true. It's definitely true. I love it. Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I appreciate it. So this is to anyone. You know, just let's kind of talk about. I think we all have an idea of what Wayfair is. You know, we have this assumed thing, but you mentioned store openings and stuff like that. So can you just kind of share, you know, what Wayfair's up to, what it's about, what it's been about? Anyone want to kick that off? I could start.
Yeah, I mean, Wayfair is the largest home retailer, primarily online, but we're quickly moving into physical retail as well. We have 2 stores open today for some of our specialty brands, and there'll be a big Wayfair store open next year, which is super exciting. We sell anything and everything for the home, every style, every price. So it really is the destination for people who are looking to make their homes feel like a better expression of them and how they want to live.
Terrific. So, you know, can you kind of talk about this transition from your marketing approach? Like, what was working, originally, and why you kind of made a transition in terms of how you needed to speak to your consumer?
Yeah, I could take that, or I could start it off. I think for Wayfair, and it's interesting, we just celebrated our 20th year anniversary, which is crazy when you think of it. You're like, wow, 20 years. If you look at Wayfair and the history and the trajectory, kind of it started really from a performance and growth perspective as a traditional D2C platform. So really hyper-focused on like how do we get that, be dynamic, how do we get that right message to the right consumer based on what they're searching for. If you go to the Wayfair site today, good luck, because you're going to get retargeted in email a bunch of times. So thank you, and I apologize in advance. But
Thank you and sorry.
Exactly, thank you and sorry. But this is kind of our bread and butter, right? And really being kind of that performance marketer. Now what we're seeing as we're transitioning and kind of continuing to grow is like, right, if you look at just as from a social perspective, everybody was kind of doing this, right? Initially starting with D2C, then the legacy brands were like, oh my God, we need to ride this wave, right? The PepsiCos of the world. Then cost rising, if you're thinking, right, on Meta. And now we're like, oh my God, those cost per acquisition costs are just rising, right? Like LTV, oh my God, it's not what it was before. How do we kind of continue accelerating our growth? So for us, we saw as a business, and again, this is all prior to Chris and I joining, that the levers that we weren't pulling were around that like emotive, right? That emotional connection, the brand love, we could start moving our customer from a transactional relationship with us, where they're coming to us because, oh my God, I need a couch. They have 10 billion couches. Great. Then I'm going to go there. That's it, right? So that they begin their journey with us, as opposed to beginning their journey on Google and then coming to us, because we're those performance marketing and search engine kind of the gurus. But really, like, how do they start the journey? Going to Wayfair, right? If you look at some of the brands that have become verbs, you just go there, right? If you go, I got here today from our office via an Uber, right? It was actually a Lyft. But I just said, oh, let me get myself an Uber in my own head, right? But that's just the transformation that they've done. And I think that's where we're looking to, like, how do we get to that point where people are just starting their journey with us from where they are today. So I don't know if you...
Yeah, I would just say that sort of as the Wayfair dinosaur, the big change has been, we've gone from acquire a customer at all costs and grow the customer base to how do you actually make that customer love the brand and how do you make them feel like they're a part of the community? And like that's the reason why Chris and Alex are at Wayfair now, right? Like that's the reason why they were brought on. Yeah.
I think the other interesting thing is like, how do we start layering in the word we're all gonna, some of you might smile, some of you might cringe, but like cultural relevancy, and like how do we add contextual relevance to what our consumer is searching for, what they're doing, above and beyond just from a purchase perspective, right? So you go to Wayfair, all of a sudden we're retargeting you for headboards, but how do we just add relevance to based on what's happening seasonally, right? Just culturally, and how do we kind of just continue to add value? If we're thinking about social, like how do we continue to add value to your feed rather than like, buy, do you need, like that transaction to like, yes, we still do that, but then how do we start adding just value to that, again, to that feed where that you actually want to engage with us and continue to kind of like follow and like empower you as a consumer to be like, so like talk about, oh my God, I got this at Wayfair, did you know?
Right. So I think that leads us nicely into Kyle, just like around messaging and creating and building assets, and you have an in-house team, and obviously these two are relatively new, and sort of can you speak to your in-house team, how you guys work collaboratively, that whole process would be great.
Yeah, so we have a pretty diverse in-house creative team. We don't use external parties for a lot of stuff. We shoot all of our TV ads in-house for the most part. We're starting to diversify as we think about doing bigger, more revolutionary campaigns for the brand. And so, yeah, our team is focused on everything from site assets, sort of the studio work, to working on displays for what the new physical retail stores will look like. And we've scaled the team from there. Yeah. Was there a second part of your question that I missed?
I mean, I guess we were talking more collaboratively about maybe you guys want to add to that a bit?
Chris and Alex definitely jump in on this, but like I think that one of the things that makes Wayfair unique is how collaborative we actually work across marketing and creative. The two teams actually sit separately, which isn't super normal, but we are, we're meeting before briefs are coming to the creative team to partner on what the strategy there is, and bringing some of our marketing folks into the edit bay when we're actually working on a cut for a TV commercial or a social asset, which can be scary for creatives, but ultimately there's a lot of trust that we've built, and it's made the work better.
Chris, can you like elaborate on, I'm sorry, you were going to say something, but maybe you're going to say what I'm going to ask you, but
Sure.
maybe build on that. Just as far as like building for social specifically, and kind of your thoughts about that transition from what you were doing to what you're doing.
Yeah, so I would definitely echo what Kyle is saying. I think too, like when I think about the social marketing team and how closely we work with our creative partners, something that I think is important for us all to like keep in mind is like, and that relationship between the teams is reminding yourself that you should be like posing the problem and not, as the marketing team, be trying to like solution for the creative team. You may have ideas, right? And they might be good ideas, but I think that approach and mentality, which
They're good sometimes. No, I'm just kidding.
sometimes,
They are.
yes, and then sometimes they're really not, right? And that's okay too, because it's not my job. I'm not the creative team. But I think that, and I see that across the organization as well. And I think just having that sort of approach, and like people have different roles and responsibilities, and we all need to kind of adhere to those while still being collaborative, is super important.
I wanted
Go ahead,
actually,
you
I know
go
I
ahead.
wanted to build on that real quick, because it's actually literally, I just came out of a meeting with our board this morning, and that was actually one of the evolution, like pivots as a business, where we're data and kind of performance driven, right? So like everything is A/B test and what performed better, and like that's it. Even though we all like A, B performed better, so who cares about A? And I think, and then and Kyle can attest to this. I think we over-indexed in terms of like the data is telling us this. That's the creative answer. Creative team. Here's the prescription, rather than like where we're at now, which I think is showing up in market. Hey, this is the data point. That's an input into the problem, the brief. Hey, creative team, this is kind of what the data's telling us. Here's a hypothesis, kind of a thought we have, but that's not the prescription, which I think is it adds to the collaborative element that I think we're in a good groove Where I think for a point, though, in our journey, which a lot of D2C companies do, is we over-index on the data and that being the answer and being like an algorithm, like a spreadsheet and like the formula, rather than like, oh no, that's an input into the art and science when it comes to creative for the channel, social.
Totally, because the data will lead you down a million different paths, all of which may give you instant gratification and instant results with a customer, but isn't actually moving anything on the long-term goal. And yeah, when you stand for everything and do everything, you don't really stand for anything. And so that has been a really interesting learning curve for our creative team and our marketing team. It's a big cultural change. And I think we're well on the journey, but haven't actually sort of reached the destination on that yet. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that?
I do, yeah.
I'm going to skip to a question that I think is really good, like following up to this. Chris, like what's not working? Like what, and you certainly can share what really has worked from a campaign perspective or what have you.
So so I think to get like to what's not working, the evolution of social since I've been there. So I started in March, and by May we had a new, and when I started, 99% of the social content was static, either single static assets or carousel assets, vastly transactional focused. That makes sense, of course, in some places, but not all places. But that was a lot of what was being produced. But by May, we had a new content strategy and go-to-market plan, which Kyle and I partnered very closely on. And that content strategy focused mostly on video. So we knew that video is where we needed to be. We needed to be resonating more, bringing more value, more than just the transactional value, but what is that like educational value, entertainment value that we can bring to our customers, which is really what we built that on. And then, so we developed that by like mid-May. We quickly got buy-in on that. By June, we had a creative team assigned. And then by July, we were turning out new video assets. And we basically, it was like truly like a light switch. We went from static to like 90% video across a lot of our channels, which was a huge shift. And I think really speaks to a lot of the trust that our leadership has in having this more brand focus, way of showing up on social. We had a lot more partner integrations, influencer integrations after that point than we did before, and it continues to evolve. But through that, and since we like literally stood this up in like less than 2 months between like start to go live, everyone like held hands and agreed that this was like, we are learning as we go, right? So we are still in the process of like, what are our content pillars? Those are evolving. We're learning a lot. Meanwhile, at that same time, we launched TikTok in April. And that has, that's actually, a lot of the content is a lot more driven by influencers and creators than in-house at the moment. But one of the things that wasn't working is we know a lot of trends from TikTok move to Instagram, but they don't all, and they don't all move necessarily at the pace that you think that they will. So there were definitely pieces of content that popped on TikTok, and we wanted to kind of replicate that because for usage rights, we couldn't use a lot of the TikTok content on Instagram, but like seeing what's popping and trying to kind of port it over, and a lot of it didn't work. And I think it didn't work because we never have this problem, but we were like too fast to market. And like some of the trends, it was like just like wasn't popping on Instagram yet. And then at the same time too, it's not the same audience. We like know that. But what was resonating with our audience on TikTok wasn't resonating there. So that was just kind of a good reminder that we do have different people following us in different places.
And we're still learning
and we're
who
still
our
learning.
audience is
Totally.
and who we want our audience to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then additionally, while Reels, for example, which is where a lot of our focus is now across the Meta platforms, we really see good results from and traction on Reels on Instagram. And so we were at the beginning, we were posting them on Facebook as well, right? There's Reels in both places. And we know that Meta is pushing this part of the platform in both places. But the Reels were like totally falling flat on Facebook. And Facebook, which has historically been a better driver of traffic, And sales, much more so than Instagram, because you can't click through. It's not built for that sort of kind of habit. It wasn't working, and it was a waste of our time even to just post it if it wasn't going to go anywhere. So, we went too far into video on Facebook. We tried some things that didn't work on TikTok. So it's really continuing to find that mix. And being okay with, like, let's try it, and let's try it a few times, because maybe one time it didn't work because of whatever, contextual, day of the week, the products that you chose. So let's try it a few times. Okay, if it still doesn't work, then it's time to do something new.
You had a really good example of like riding the wave on something that had grown really significantly for you.
Yes. So we had our first huge reel over the summer was a drink recipe, which now they're everywhere. They weren't everywhere early to mid July. And we had one, we used ASMR. It was this drink recipe, and it totally blew up. And we went from getting 100,000-ish organic reach on a reel to like 3 million. And we're like, all right, we're gonna make more drinks. And then the next one, it wasn't quite as high, but it was still pretty high. And then every Friday, we're like, well, every Friday we're gonna do a drink recipe, and we're going to get ideas from our audience, like, what's our next drink? So we did. We asked, what should we make next? People would tell us. We would make it. And then we just like saw this decline, and I think it was a mix of a few things. It was a mix of like, and then we cut it, and now there's no more drinks. But we probably waited a little bit too long. And I think the first one was so successful because it was different for Wayfair. It wasn't like content that people necessarily expected, but it also wasn't super saturated yet. And so then that one was kind of the most successful. And then it kind of got old. People had seen us do it. A bunch of other brands were doing it. And so it got stale. But yeah, but that's okay. We learned.
I think the time of day and like day of the week that we launched it also really hit, because it was a sort of a light summer beverage with some fun ASMR stuff, some good colors, some beautiful Wayfair products. And we launched it on a Friday afternoon when people are like ready for a cocktail.
Yes.
And people really, really engaged with it, and it was surprising and exciting.
Yep.
I think one other thing that there was a really good learning from it, in time, we were running an outdoor campaign, right? Because it's summer. Seasonally, what's relevant as a consumer, outdoor furniture, right? So traditionally, the old playbook was like, great, this is the outdoor campaign. These are the assets for that campaign. This is the homepage asset. Great. Now let's recrop this as a 4x3 and a 9x16 and a 16x9. We got social assets. Big Easter egg, that always used to fall flat on social. This allowed us to then, oh man, we still have this outdoor campaign. We still have that TV message, all this. Then we were able to have a channel message, channel-specific lens through these drink recipes that were outside, outdoors, on the patio, that you could see their furniture. So there was this connective tissue between that like macro campaign that as a business, as a brand and a business, we were prioritizing, right, and talking about. But then how does that trickle down to the across the channels? And it showed the organization be like, oh man, we can actually do this. And then we can actually tell an omni-channel story without being literally asset A on every channel. So I think that was a big learning that, again, we were talking about in a planning meeting, that people were like, oh, wow. And literally our commercial officer, we like, in beginning of the summer, he was like, I don't know, Alex, if we could do this. Then at the end of the summer, we could do this. This is great. Yeah. So I think that was the other kind of learning and unlock, that it just showed the organization like, oh, this is how that could come to life. Again, just in an organization that hasn't traditionally been brand first.
So you mentioned Kelly Clarkson, and that seems like an obvious one, which is great. But outside of her, like, how do you determine your partnerships, particularly, related to social? What's that process? How do you figure out creatively how you work with them?
I could start, and then again, you guys jump in. I think for us, it's funny what I was just talking about a little bit, like what is that calendar, right? Sure. And using that as initial framework of like, okay, what are we focusing and talking about then, right? Then how do we look at influencer and almost like what's the scale, right, of that, right? And then moving from just like, traditionally in the past being a year ago, when it was like influencers just driving revenue and scale. how do we look at that kind of cohort of influencers? And yes, there are some that are, lower funnel affiliate and kind of driving some of that. Then you have more mid and upper funnel that are creating content, and that's kind of an awareness. And then how do we then start syndicating that content across the board? And then from a content creation standpoint, it's part of almost like that original, I'm going to say brief, even though that's probably not the right word, but it is the right word. But like, what's the meta campaign or campaign concept? And then how do we brief that into the creators so that they can kind of tie into that message, but through their own perspective, right? And then based on that, if you think of like Wayday, right, the objective there is like, oh, we need to drive sales, right, traffic and sales. So kind of the content being created has that flair. If we're looking at like outdoors, this past summer we had a campaign called Outdoorsy, around the concept of like we're all outdoorsy, kind of what you're outdoors, what outdoors means to you is different for me, but we're all outdoorsy. So like then we're briefing that into the creatives, into the creators, and then we're getting content that kind of talks to that a little bit more. So I think that's how kind of we're looking at it from a, hey, what are we all talking about? Then what's the role of influencer? As we get more sophisticated, how do we start syndicating that influencer? So it moves just from a like lower funnel to really full funnel. For Wayday, I think we did a good job of it in terms of like literally like an assembly line. Influencer team getting influencers, passing that to Chris in org social, and then a subset of that passing to paid social, right? Which again sounds like, oh my God, isn't that kind of like what you're supposed to do? But
It's a muscle.
It's a muscle.
It's a muscle you have to build, yeah.
Yeah, and given like our scale of our business, how do you do that? How do you operationalize that? How do we then make sure creative is in the loop so that it also feels brand right, brand appropriate? And then as we're starting to explore even new areas on social, like our Wayfair on Air platform, how do we leverage creators for not just like the expected syndication on org social, but how do we do live streams, and how do we do things above and beyond kind of the expected within our ecosystem, where we've done a good job even as we're launching into physical bringing the influencers there, right, and actually having them as that being part of their content creation process. So I don't know if you guys have anything else to add.
No. Good job, Alex.
Like, I don't know if this is part of your duty, but like as far as sourcing influencers and partners that are already kind of affiliated with Wayfair in some capacity, like can you speak to how those are born?
I could start. I think on the sourcing part, we're getting better, and I'm looking at folks on my team that are here. We're getting better. Again, so like a lot of folks, we were a combination of Google Sheets and emails and Slacks, and oh my God, did we work with this person 3 years ago? We've started leveraging a platform so that we could almost a CRM platform so that we could start kind of operationalizing it. We're still working with third-party sources to help us drive scale. We're really focused on how do we expand our direct relationships so that we could have kind of a cohort of folks that we just work with that just, hey, they're all through a brand lens, but then you could start getting into category nuances and different type of channels, expertise, and reach, right? And then in terms of, what was the second part of your question? You forgot.
Sourcing and then make, I don't know.
Alex, I think. Is it working? Okay. I think the one thing that you didn't mention is we're doing a lot better job of listening to our customers and listening to influencers who are talking about Wayfair as well, and using that as a way of engaging them, which, it tends to, I think, be a little more one-off and hands-on in those instances, but I think those are some of the most interesting partnerships that we've done.
And I think the other piece that we're early days, but I think, I don't know, Chris, when you joined, but when I joined and I told people like my network, like, oh, I'm joining Wayfair, everybody was singing the Wayfair jingle to me. And everybody was like all of a sudden coming out of the woodworks with like Wayfair stories. Oh my God, I ordered something, I got it in 90 hours, or oh my God, something didn't arrive right, and I was able to return it or get something for an exchange. I think for us, it's like, how do we empower those customers that are, in theory, influencers, right, and ambassadors for us, but how do we like empower them and across our ecosystem? Because given our scale, if you think of that, if you start adding those 1 + 1, that equals 1,200 really quickly, just given our scale. So I think that's the other piece that for us, we're working on, like, how do we empower our consumers, especially the ones that are, how do you turn a consumer to an advocate to an ambassador, like, that like sequence. So I think that's the other big unlock that's going to be for us. And that's where, again, social listening comes in, influencer, and that goes back to like what we were talking about earlier around that, like, cultural relevance, brand love, and then all of a sudden people starting their journey with Wayfair. All of a sudden Wayfair becomes that verb. So.
All right, I think I have like 3 questions. I don't know what time we're supposed to end at, but how much time do we have?
We could take 2 more.
Oh, great. So, okay. So, as far as measuring success, like what is success in your mind? And then my other really favorite question too is like, what makes you most proud to be working at Wayfair? So maybe I'll let each of you kind of.
I can start with the success piece. So when I joined and in moving and shifting our content strategy and approach and really thinking about social in a different way, we went from like being performance based on even organic social to really being engagement based. And through this new content, we've really seen huge upticks in engagement. Even when the algorithm is not favoring us and our engagement rate stays the same, but our reach is all over the place. So like at the end of the day, we know that when people are seeing our content, that they're reacting to it, they're liking it, they're sharing it, they're commenting, they're saving, and
they're not using social channels as a customer service
as a
vehicle as
dumping
well.
ground. Yes.
That's been a major change since we've.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's right. That's the thing too. As you get more of the happy comments, people are less likely to like blow it up and be angry, because then you have, people reacting. Some of my favorite comments are when they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry you had a problem with your table. I love mine." Like those comments are the best. They don't come every day, but when you do, you cherish them. So we've seen a lot of success on the engagement front. We are still trying to, through social, like unlock traffic, sales, etc. We've done a lot in the last couple of months with really trying to optimize and merchandise on like IG shops. My team is here. Thank you. Good job. So that we've seen like huge upticks in like organic traffic to the site, which is amazing for us. So that's all been great. And then in terms of, was it why you like working at Westlands?
I think we have 10
Why are you
minutes. So
proud?
we're not in a rush here. So yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
We do one at a time. We can go around.
Yeah, we can go
Okay.
around too. But yeah, what are you most proud of in terms of working there?
So personally, it's been prior to joining Wayfair, I led social at Bose. I've been at Puma, some agencies in the Boston area, and I really like, you go and stay someplace for like people, and I think just like like the cross collaboration, the openness to try new things, the willingness from leadership to like allow change at a big scale quickly, while saying, I really don't know how long it's going to take to show performance increase on. It might take 6 months, it might take 12. These were literally the conversations. But you show the early wins and you show that you're moving towards something, and that's like exciting, and it makes you want to like do more and like learn more and try more things, because you have a type of environment where you're able to do that, which I think is awesome.
I mean, I think going back to your statement about like 2 months to kind of convert all of your, I mean, that's impressive.
I mean, the TV team didn't love that we took the video team for social, but they're fine now.
They're fine. Yeah. I think just in terms of what I'm most proud of, I think I'm proud of how excited the team is to try something new. They really don't get scared easily, and that has been awesome to see. And when you talk to people who shop at Wayfair, who love the brand, who love what we're doing, they have a real personal connection with the products that we sell, because home is a deeply personal category, and that always makes me feel great.
I think going back to really quick your first question around measurement, I think what I'm excited that as a business, to Chris's point, we're moving away from just, hey, all channels are measured against the same metric, right? Because if you think if you play that out, that's flawed. and we're moving towards like, yes, there's a baseline metric where certain marketing channels are kind of all tied to, but then there's like I'm going to say holistic scorecard where we could start looking at like, oh, influencer, right? It's not just revenue, attributed revenue, right? If you start looking at social, there's engagement, that's super important, but like I think that evolution has really just helped just widen the aperture for like, oh yeah, let's actually try that because we're measuring it a little bit more holistically and just honestly, some of it being common sense, but some of it just being like, oh, how do we actually think about that, right? So I mentioned influencer, and yes, there's revenue, but then there's content created, right? Oh man, what's the value of that content being created if our team had to do that? Oh, whoa, that's actually, there's a value there, and that actually it's a double value, because then in theory now our creative team in our internal team can actually focus on another project. And now we're getting almost like a 2-for-1, right? A BOGO. Buy one, get one free. So I think that's it. That's been super exciting. I think the second piece in terms of what's been just satisfying, right? I think just besides the people piece, these two being some of my favorite people at Wayfair, I think it's just the.
You're all really great.
Bullshit artist.
I know, I am totally. I hate this guy. Literally, he's my BFF. I think it's the willingness to try. I think the people, and I think just some of the ability to impact at scale and being able to move quickly, and it's okay if you fail. And I think that authority or a kind of empowerment, I guess that's a better word, but that empowerment, and it's funny, even with my team, they're like, oh my God, should we spend this? This seems like a lot. I'm like, no, go, spend. We have to spend to like try. But I think that empowerment, obviously within reason and being kind of like, there's a hypothesis behind it, but I think that is been super interesting. And for us now, it's obviously like, how do you do that? How do you do that smartly? How do you iterate quickly and take some of those learnings? But I think just that empowerment to do that, and kind of one of our people principles is around like being an owner, kind of like that ownership mentality. Again, it's super interesting when you think of a company our scale. We have, almost 15,000 employees, Fortune 200 something company. You're like, whoa, I didn't realize the scale. And then you're like, wait, what? You could make that decision yourself? Oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
I also think like there's been a common theme too, just around having to report back performance style metrics to leadership about success, and the fact that it sounds like with each of the organizations who've spoken thus far, there's this level of trust in your teams to do what's right for the brand, and give that brand love stuff, that top funnel stuff, and then also be able to kind of measure it back down to measurable results, and it's why you guys are so successful. So it's great. Anyway, maybe we have like 4 more minutes. So one other question I had was, what are you like based upon the last couple of years or the last year? What are you super leaning into for 2023? As far as maybe social media, because that's what we're talking about here, or even from a creative standpoint?
I could start. It's funny that we have Sprinkler here, because actually we're a Sprinkler client. Hello. So, I mean, for us, like like Alex said, we're a massive company. Our teams are are small. Well, my team is small, and some people have bigger teams. So, but I think there's just like a lot of work to be done. So there's a lot of like fundamentals. So like better, you mentioned listening. We're getting better at listening. We need to be better at listening. We have, just given the scale of comments and that are out there and topics and discussions across channels, this is something that like we're actively working towards. So I'm excited to continue that. When we launched our new content strategy, it was mostly focused on Instagram and Pinterest, which is a huge driver for us. But like now we're expanding that out. We need to be just as thorough and thoughtful across all. But given people and bandwidth, we focused on like what are our most important, and then we'll scale that out. So I'm excited for the continued growth and expansion and like testing and trying over this next year. Plus we'll be hiring a community manager, so if anyone knows anyone, find me. It's my pitch.
I think one of the things that's not directly, I'm going to say it and you're going to be like, that's not creative or that's not social, but like becoming better merchants. I think for us, so Wayfair for those of you that may not realize, we're a marketplace. So I know when I joined previous to this, I was at footwear, before that music and agency, and I came in like, all right, great, who do I talk to about the product? And people were like, who cares about the product? We have everything. Whatever the consumer wants, we have.
No one said who cares about the product.
I mean, metaphorically, but like,
They implied it though.
Yeah.
I've been there for 10 years. I can say that. Yeah, they
Yeah.
implied it. Yeah.
Should we
Yeah.
asterisk this like,
Exactly.
talk?
Yeah, we could.
yeah. But it's more about like, oh, well, we
Firewall.
have what's right for you, right? And if you want a sofa, we have 10,000 sofas.
Yes.
You want a blue sofa, we got 4,000 blue sofas, right? But not around like if you go to J. Crew and it's like, oh no, that same jacket you see there, leopard jacket. Kyle loves leopard jackets, and so do I. But no, if you see that
So true.
if you see that editorial piece in the store, that's the same thing you're going to see in email and in catalog, right? For us, we didn't think that way. So I think if you start thinking about creative, how do we start thinking like that from a merchandising perspective? And this way, you just get stronger creative. So for us, like we've been focusing around this omni-channel marketing journey. Now we're going to start layering in omni-channel merchandising, right? If you think about physical retail, all of a sudden that's a really interesting dynamic when you combine like, oh, marketplace best practices with like merchandising and then creative. Whoa, holy cow, that could be like a really interesting kind of.
Like, do you mean like if I liked a leather or a leopard jacket that like I could then maybe be served a blue couch because the two kind of somehow.
Go together,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah.
then how do we move from just this is what the algorithm brings you to having a little bit more of a human touch and combining the two? So if you think of like all that machine learning plus you layer in kind of that hand curation piece, that could be a really dynamic tool.
Like you're helping me as opposed to just annoying me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. All right, I think we're at time.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
Kyle didn't get to say his.
I'm good.
Gosh, Kyle, I'm so
it.
sorry.
No,
How
I'm
could you
excited about the
forget?
merchandising piece of things.
I know,
Actually,
that was
that's
a-
high on my list. And then, we are on our journey, like I said earlier, in terms of figuring out how we're going to create amazing social content. And I think that I don't know that what we're doing necessarily changes a year from now, but how we're doing it, I think, changes, and I'm excited for that. Yeah.
I'm excited that you all work together because you seem to have a really great relationship, and that's a lot of what makes it work. So that's the magic. So anyway, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Guys,
Thank you.